that you had to ask the governor for his agreement. And he had not done that. He had not followed the rules. So he had done something wrong. I remember, and that was in 1964, that he was very angry when he came home, and he didn't want anything to do with it. Come back to the reprimand a bit later. So nothing happened. There were some people who came to ask for questions, some journalists and so on, but nothing really made. And in 1976, my father died at the age of 80. And which came from Jerusalem, from Rabbi Tokayer, with the answer that 95% of all the visa, the destination visa that he had issued, 2,345, had survived, 95%. But it arrived at the day of his funeral. He never knew the answer to this. It must have made him very happy. Well, then, after that, in 1976, nothing again. Small things, small attention, left and right, small memories, but nothing very major. Until during the 90s, Rabbi Ronald Gray from Boys Town, Jerusalem. I'm sure you're all familiar with Boys Town, Jerusalem. Fantastic school in Jerusalem. He caught the story and said he wanted to do something. And he started organizing plate dinners in New York and all over the East Coast and the US. I was working in the US at that time, so I had the privilege of attending a number of those dinners. And I remember distinctly that there were then still a number of attendants who came up to me after the talk and got from the inside pocket, they took their passport and showed it to me, and that was the visa from my father with the signature. That was quite emotional. Those things. In addition, in Boys Town, Jerusalem made a big monument in their school, in their fantastic school with fantastic grounds, beautiful school, very nice people. And Yad Vashem also then gave him the name of the graduates in 1997, for which we were very grateful. And I hope my father watched from cloud, and he must have been very grateful as well. Then again, nothing much happened. The ambassador of Holland, the Dutch ambassador of Holland in Lithuania, 5 years ago, I met him there, and he's called Bert van der Lingen. He had heard about the story and said, we need a monument here in Lithuania, in Prague. We need a monument for him. We must make a monument for him. So he organized a monument, beautiful monument in the main street of Kaunas, just in front of the office of my father, which was also then the office of the honorary consul. And it was opened in 2018, 4 years ago, by the king, our king, to visit, together with the president of Lithuania. We were very thankful for that beautiful monument. At the same time, Jan Brokken, a famous writer, author, Dutch author, had heard the story, actually from the ambassador, and he was very much interested in writing a book about my father. So he came and asked if that was okay, and he wrote the book. It was published in 2018, It's called The Just, and it is now translated in, I think, something like 8 different languages. It's not yet in Hebrew, but I'm informed that there are discussions going with Yad Vashem because they have a publishing department to see if they are interested in publishing also a Hebrew. In that book, it's 500 pages. There's so much information about what happened, not only around the visa, but also all those people who escaped, and the stories of everyone reads like a novel. It's amazing. And of course, my father opened the door so that they could get out, but everyone has his own story. A lot of people, a lot of the refugees ended up in Shanghai. Many went on all over the world. A lot of them went to the US. And none of them, zero, went to Curacao. If they would have gone, they would have been refused anyway. Last thing is that for a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, there was a big monument also now in Eindhoven, which was organized by the initiative of the mayor, because he also read this book and he said, well, we need a monument in Eindhoven, which is the headquarters of Philips, and that was also a magnificent moment for us to be there and to see our father being honored. But the thing about honor, it is. I have to tell you that my father never liked to talk, never liked to be in the limelight. He felt very uncomfortable with talking about these things, the heroic things which he did. That's not according to him. He had very strong values and norms, and that led him to do what he did. And he thought that was only natural. You don't need a monument for that. And we, as his children, my sister is still alive. She lives in Amsterdam, quite near me. She's 95, but still going strong. And my brother, he died 8 years ago. But yeah. When we think about our father, we think about his norms and values. And the fact that he was faced with a dilemma at the time, what do I do? Do I tell these people that the refugees that I can't do anything for them, like all the other consulate did? Or do I think something that I can save those lives? And he made the right choice. He made the right choice by saving all these lives and putting himself very much in danger, especially by the Germans in Holland. 5 years, he must have been walking on tiptoes, not saying anything to anybody. My father actually, he had an egg twin brother with whom he shared everything. Even with him, he didn't share what had happened in Lithuania, because it's very easy to get rumors going, and the rumors will kill you. He knew that, and it was imperative that the Germans didn't learn what he had done. So, yes, monuments. My father would have been embarrassed, and he would have been uncomfortable with the monument. But if it would lead to making people think, wait a minute, we are all faced with dilemmas in our lives, and then we should not make the easy choice too fast. Think about it. Think about your norms and value, and then if that can be achieved by the monuments and by all the attention, then I think he would have been very happy. Thank you very much for listening to me, and if you have any questions, I will be very much pleased to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glassman. Now, any questions? Somebody wants to ask something? Okay, please. Just a minute.
First, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of my family, because your father gave a Curacao visa to my father's family in Kaunas. My name is Jonathan Schreier. I'm the deputy chief of mission of the U.S. Embassy in Israel. So it's a special honor for me to be here with you today. I had a question, which is twofold. One is, you mentioned that your father destroyed all his records from his service as honorary consul. Do you know if there were records that were found later in the Netherlands or elsewhere with his list of who he gave visas to? Because we know that Consul Sugihara kept records which were available, were found later and are available for people to review. Are there records of your father's work? And the second question is, do you know, some of the speakers here before you mentioned that there was not communication between your father and Consul Sugihara. Did you hear any stories from your father about any communications he might have had with Consul Sugihara? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, it's nice of you to ask that question, because actually there were a few communications. It's very strange because my father or our family and the Sugiharas lived only about 200 yards from each other in one of the neighborhoods around Kaunas, but they never met personally. But they did have communications by telephone, because Sugihara, being Japanese, had to, he didn't use a pen, but he used a brush in order to brush in his transit visa. And that brushing takes a lot longer than writing a visa. And my father, first he did the first 1,000, I think he did with by hand, but then they made a stamp out of it, so that he was much faster than that. And Sugihara phoned him, I think, a couple of times to ask my father, please don't write so fast because I can't keep up with my brushes. So there was that communication, but that was the only communication there. And as far as records are concerned, yes, there's the list of Sugihara, and that survived. And on most of those, they also had the destination visa of my father, because otherwise, of course, Sugihara would not have given the transit visa, although he did something. He wrote without the destination visa of my father. But my father also numbered all the visa that he had sent out, that he had signed. And we looked at the visa of those people, and we looked at the numbers that my father put on it, and the highest number that we were able to find was of the family of Kupinski, and that was dated on the 2nd of August, and the 3rd of August he had to close the consulate, as the consulate was then taken over by the Russians. The whole country was being Russified. Sugihara still went on for a couple of weeks to write his his transit visas. I know from his records that on the 2nd of August, when my father had to finish after writing 2,345, he had only written 800, so he had a big backlog of still to catch up. But but apart from that, nothing, no records at all. My father must have been very much afraid that it would fall in the hands of Germans.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Any more questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Zwartendijk. We will now hear Beryl Shaw's story, please.
His Excellencies, maybe Ambassador Mrs. Vilna, Ambassador of Lithuania, Mr. Hans, Doctor, Ambassador of the Netherlands, Mr. Jonathan Schreiner, Vice Ambassador of the United States, and any additional member of the diplomatic corps or consular corps whom I may have missed. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps at the very beginning, I will mention a few words of how it was that I somehow got mixed up in this whole little, very, very well-known now incident in a very, very big war. Now, I was at the time a young boy of 14, and it all started that my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, and their little 1.5-year-old child wanted to leave the city of Krakow, which was already bombed on the very first day of the war. And my brother-in-law wanted to take his wife, my sister, and their son to a safe place in the middle of Poland, near a city called Lublin. Lublin in those days was right in the middle of Poland. Now it has shifted, as lots of things have moved since. Now, while they were saying goodbye to my parents looked at me and said, look, why should a 14-year-old stay in a city which is going to be bombed as it is close to the German border? Take him along. So they took me along and I went with them. And this is why we somehow traveled together all the way in the direction of Lublin. Before even reaching Lublin, my brother-in-law was an extraordinary individual, without any news, without any knowledge of what was really happening. He had the feeling of what was happening on the roads, by seeing here and there people escaping in military cars, in diplomatic cars. He realized things weren't going well for Poland. And then he somehow realized that not far away from us, the Germans have already advanced in the first blitzkrieg of the world. He then decided, if we actually reached that place in Lublin where we had to stay, he then decided we are going to turn east towards Russia. we don't want to get caught by the Germans. And if we get as far as the border to Russia, and the Germans go all the way up to the border of Russia, we'll cross the border into Russia. And I've pointed out to many people until before that everybody in Europe at that time thought Russia was a fantastic place. Stalin's Russia, everybody had everything, work, money, cars, luxury. The propaganda was really fantastic. Now what happened is, as we approached the Russian border, the Russians came into Poland from the east and divided Poland with the Germans, so that Poland ceased to exist as a country. And whether we liked it or not, we were in Russian territory. Now my brother-in-law realized very soon that this is not a place where we want to stay. Now to get out of there wasn't easy. So he thought a little bit and he decided he wants to go north, because there are still a few little countries like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, who were at that time independent, and they had consulates there, probably an embassy still open, and perhaps one could get a visa to go somewhere. And so we arrived to Vilnius. Now, we stayed in Vilnius relatively short time, and then went to Kaunas. For one reason, we left Krakow in Poland to go to Lublin in Poland. So we didn't take our passports along. No one had a passport. And even to get, if some embassy or consulate would be kind enough to give us a visa, they had no document on which the visa could be stamped. And so we started looking around for possibilities and found that the British Charge d'Affaires in Kaunas could issue certificates stating who you were and that you're a Polish citizen. Now, receiving a certificate like this instead of a passport brought up various doubts. And very few people in those days were familiar with the term of now I've forgot that term, a passport, a document that could be used as a passport.
Laissez-passer or sauf-conduit or safe-conduct.
It is named after the gentleman who proposed it, I think before the First World War, Nansen, a Nansen passport. So that was really a document which could be used as a passport, as we found out later in the Dutch embassy, as well as a consulate, as well as the Japanese consulate in Kaunas. So first he got that document for everyone in the family, and we were a group of 7 people. And already at that time, a little difficulty came up. It was a family with the name Frankel. And here was a boy whose name was Shore. He didn't quite belong to that group. Who was he? Why should he travel with the Frankels? Perhaps they found him somewhere. Doesn't belong to them. So, in order to be able to explain things, he took me along. And that was very, very lucky for me, because I can remember that part of the story. Now, it took several months between the visa, between obtaining that document, the Nansen passports, and the visas. Things didn't go so very quickly. And it all went by with word of mouth. Someone heard something, most of the rumors were wrong, but there was a rumor that one could get a visa from the Japanese consul and first from the Dutch consul and somehow do something. So my brother-in-law went. He was told that first he had to go and get the Dutch visa so that he had a visa to some place, and that could give the Japanese consul the chance of issuing a transit visa. Both consulates, as far as I know, were the last two consulates in Kaunas. All the other consulates left. And I think that there must have been not only a contract, but agreement between those two consulates that they'll both issue visas with the hope that perhaps it'll help people. No one was sure of that. Now, at the same time, I must also mention that we were still in Russia. Although Vilnius was given to Lithuania by the Russians, which was very nice. Short time after that, the Russians decided they could take the whole thing back, and not only back, but the rest of Lithuania too. And they changed it into the Lithuanian Soviet Socialist Republic, and they were really running the country. And when the Russians ran a country at that time, I don't really know what it's like today, but I don't think it's much different. The attitude, the atmosphere was just sheer fear. Now it's difficult to somehow explain to people what fear really is. But I'll give you a little example. Perhaps that may give us some idea. And it's an example that I've seen. A family sits around a small table, having dinner of whatever they could find at that time in the various shops, and talk the way a family does. All of a sudden, you hear heavy boots coming up the staircase. Everybody stops talking. The fork on the way to the mouth stops in mid-air. Everybody's listening. And then the footfalls stop at someone else's door. Everybody continues eating and talking. This is the atmosphere, and that went on for 24 hours a day with 1,000 little variations. Now there is also another little point I would like to stress. With very few exceptions, all the foreign consulates and embassies that managed to save a large number, or considerable number of Jews, had, shall we say, one thing in common, that they were a part of a chain. Very little and very few things were done by one man of his own. And particularly in this case, there were so many little stations along the way where each and every one of them could have completely cancelled the whole effort. It started with the British charge d'affaires who issued those Nansen passports. He issued them to people who simply said, "That's me." Very many people didn't even have a piece of paper. He nevertheless issued them with those Nansen passports. Then the Dutch consul with his visa, and then the Japanese consul, Sugihara, with his. And then came something very, very serious, which was probably the biggest danger on the way. Now we had passports, we had visas, but we were in Russia, and we had to get out of there. And to get out of Russia, you needed a special permit. And that permit was given by a very nasty organization, the GPU NKVD, with its various names. The Russian secret police was in charge of it. And there were countless of people who applied, and the answer was "Niet." No explanation, no reason why not. "Niet, you are not going." That's all. Somehow, a lot of people did get those visas. Sorry, those exit permits. But to give you an example of the problems, an uncle of mine who came late to Vilna managed still to get those visas, the Dutch visa and the Japanese visa. But when he applied for an exit permit, the lady there, Tovarish, what was her name? I forget names. Anyway, the lady in charge looked at him and said, "You're not going anywhere." Opened the drawer, threw his documents into the drawer and said, "Out." He came home completely, shattered. What could he do? My brother-in-law decided we'll try something else. The next day, he took him along to get to this Mrs. Nina was her name, by the way, funnily enough. And Tovarish Nina talked very nicely to him. Somehow he managed to get on with her when he got our visas. And she asked him, "Well, why are you back here?" He said, "Look, this is my brother, and he applied and hasn't received an answer yet." So Nina says, "Well, where are his documents?" He says, "In your desk." So she opened the desk. "Ah, yes, I forgot them." He said, "Come back tomorrow, you'll get your permit." So these were the conditions. I, by accident, I don't want to make this a too long story, I, by accident, received 2 permits to leave Russia. I left on one. The second one was slightly doctored. The name was changed, photograph was changed. And a man called Asher Wiener left, a friend of ours, left on the second permit. I mean, nothing was stable, nothing was in order, everything was totally mixed up. And now I would like to finalize with one little story about Mr. Zwartendijk. After all, we are here in his honor. When we came to his consulate, there were people outside, but not too many at the time when we came in. But the consulate itself, which wasn't very big, was filled with people. Everybody was talking at the same time. And it was a total, complete bedlam. And then the consul Zwartendijk walked up to my brother-in-law and said, "What can I do for you?" So he handed over to him 7 such passports. Zwartendijk looked at him and said, "7? How can I haven't got time to issue one?" So finally he said to him, in the corner there was a little table. He said, "Sit down at this table." He brought along a sample of the visa, and he said, "Copy that 7 times, I'll sign it." So our Dutch visas were handwritten by Zwartendijk. That also shows the total bedlam that went on at the time. But bedlam or not, we were amongst a few very lucky ones. Thank you very much.
Mr. Shaw. Thank you very much. The ninth Fort presented a new exhibition, and we will now see a short presentation with Vytautas Petrikėnas, the head of the historic department of the ninth Fort. The interviewer is board of our management, Yarit Glazer. Please. It will be a Zoom recording.
Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Lithuania, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of the Netherlands, ladies and gentlemen. I feel deeply honored to participate in this event, and I want to show you one presentation about our exhibition, The Diplomats of Hope. The mission of the Kaunas 9th Fort Museum is to educate the public about the atrocities of the past and to raise awareness to prevent future genocides. The museum represents the Holocaust from various angles. The exhibitions tell not only about the painful losses, but also about the heroes of the time, the Jews' saviors. There are two exhibitions, one about the Lithuanians' righteous among the nations, and the other about the activities of the Council of the Netherlands, Jan Zwartendijk, and the Council of Japan, Chinyas Kara. 20 years ago, the first exhibition on the activities of these noble diplomats was presented to the public in the Kaunas 9th Fort Museum. In 2020, a new exhibition, Diplomats of Hope, was installed in the museum. It uses modern interactive tools to present unique historical material which introduces the diplomats' contribution to the rescue of Jews in Lithuania in 1940. Special construction divides the single space into separate circular arranged exhibition zones. The left-hand side of the stands provides information about the refugees who have entered Lithuania and the activities of Jan Zwartendijk and Chinyas Kara in the country. This is an exclusive material presenting the unique stories of the people who received visas. In an effort to encourage the younger generation of visitors to take a more active interest in history, a new interactive game, Sit in the Diplomat's Chair, was developed and integrated into the exhibition. At the back of the exhibition hall, a piece of furniture imitating a diplomat's chair is set up with integrated special equipment. The visitor is invited to become a diplomat by being approached by visa applicants. After listening to visitors, they have to decide whether or not to issue visas. On the right side of the exhibition, a large format map is on display, illustrating the refugees' journey from Lithuania to Kobe, Japan, and the wide destinations of those who escaped around the world. The visitors are invited to reflect on this material by looking at the unique art installation in the center of exhibition. It is represented with a list of the names of all known recipients of life visas, which is linked to the image of authentic visa through symbolic means. The yellow threads connect each name to the life visa. This symbolizes the hope that the visas gave to people, the hope of living for safer countries. all examples of past heroes give us strength to resist new threats and to world peace and human rights. Thank you for attention and peace to all your homes.
Thank you very much for the participation. Ačiū labai, kad jūs mums papasakojot.
Thank you, Yarit. Special thanks, I would like to mention the Carol Hoffman. Thank you very much. Now, Mickey, your closing remarks.
What a remarkable evening. I'm really excited. So, this evening gave us a lot of inspiration of these noble values of these incredible people here. And we all have a great respect to those incredible human beings whose order of conscience broke the rules and saved the whole world. Let's remember them, tell their stories, and deliver it for the next generation. I want to thank everyone who took part of the organizing of this unusual evening. Thank you very much for the Lithuanian Embassy, to the Netherlands Embassy, and also to our guests from the Japanese Embassy, and to everyone here who came. Some of them are, I think they are the first time in Beit Vilna. So it was a great pleasure to have you here. And I just wanted to note that every year we are going to Ponar to have our March of the Living. September the 23rd is the date of the liquidation of Ghetto Vilna. And around this date we are in Lithuania, in Vilna, in Kaunas, in Shventsian, Nemenchin, and other Jewish sites. So please note to get into our website, to our Facebook, to get some information about our programs for the March of the Living and other activities here in Beit Vilna. Thank you very much to everyone. And let us sing our anthem before we finish. Tikva. Thank you everyone and good evening. Thank you.
Once again, next year I know now that the Dutch visas are not
אני רוצה פשוט להודיע, השגרירה מבקשת לעדכן שכל האירוע הזה הוקלט ויופץ באתר שלנו.
Thank you very much. Likewise.